cool, I just mustn't need as much sleep. And then I did a genetics test, and there was like one of the sleep variances was a trait within my genetics that wasn't strong. And so I started taking a supplement, and now I'm back up to like 7 hours to 7.5 a night. And all it was is because I was ignorant, and I can't sit there and pray against it because it probably wouldn't have changed. Like it's my genetics.
Hi everyone, I want to welcome you to Hope for the Future podcast. Really been looking forward to doing this today with Jake and looking forward to having a discussion. We've had very, very succinct discussions over physical fitness and spirit life and spirit things, and we thought we would do a bit of a podcast about it today. And so hope you enjoy our discussion, and again, welcome. I want to introduce Jake to you. Jake has been my business manager and PA and general run around, work hard young man. Known Jake for many, many years, been part of our family, and has become a very well-educated consultant for fitness, particularly regarding gym and some of those things. And I've had a lot of good feedback about his life and about what he does. And we've even had him speaking at Thunder Academy, which has been absolutely amazing and very, very, very good. And so really looking forward to having our discussion today and as we kind of go. So this is Jake. I just want to introduce yourself and say hi.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me on. It's a interesting position to be on this side of the screen and not on the back end of everything, but it's a privilege and an honor to be able to come on and just chat around what I think is really important for the body as a whole. When you look at body, soul and spirit, I think there's many individuals who hit their later years and then realize that they neglected a part of the physical body for quite a while when
amen.
You go on the journey. But it's just really, really cool to be here and to share the couch instead of table. So it's an honor and a privilege. Thank you.
Cool. I'm going to be kind of handing over this to Jake to sort of lead our discussion today, so that he has some questions and things that we want to talk around, really, that I think are important for us if we are looking for longevity and the ability to be able to transmute our genetics out of what we're doing. The most important part is taking care with what we have now. And so our discussions are going to be around some of that subject and whatever sort of channel we choose to go down in our conversation together. And I hope you enjoy our time. Thank you. This is over to Jake.
This might almost kind of be one of the most non-spiritual podcasts you've ever done.
Don't know about that.
We're getting down to science. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, it's all interlinked and it's what makes us us. But I wanted to kind of start out with a conversation we had at the end of last year. And you said something really interesting, which was, for you, one of the saddest things that happened was when Christianity separated science from God. And I thought that'd be a really interesting place to start because from my perspective, health is science, and separating those two things, it can't exist in my world because they go hand in hand. But do you think people view both of those things together often?
I personally, when in my early years as a believer, science was not considered any facet of kingdom life. It was just research, and that's that, and there's science and there's spirit. And for me, over the last 40 years, my journey has been to realize that science backs spirit, and there must be a correlation between them. You know, if we have a look at everything to do with light, when you first have things starting with Einstein doing what he was doing, and all the stuff that happened to him there with the then religious system to create much harm, and then the separation that occurred in the religious system of those days for science and for spirit matter to be separated, and has been like that for all those years. But I know that in the last number of years there's been a coming together of some of these, and I've seen that not only in the supporting information of spirit things that I'd learned regarding my genetics in my body, my physical structure, the blood of Christ, the grave, all of the things to do with the transmutation of the physical form. how they're starting to overlap and come together, and how science is only backing what we now see and what we now understand, with the 24 living letters, the 24 pairs of autosomes as the structured process, the 22 autosomes that, not 22, it's 22 pairs of autosomes with 2 X and Y chromosome. And so how the 24 letters are all woven into that fabric, and how science is just going through the same process and trying to understand how we're going to live forever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's been these conversations that we've had
Absolutely.
just over and over and over and over in a very private matter and private way. And so I think that there has been a separation of science, but it's coming together. I started talking about light how many years ago?
I think that was actually, ironically, for the conversation, that was the session that, for me, a lot of this stuff made sense, because I was very conflicted of the world life and then the church life, because I love what the pursuit of God leads to, and then the world almost spoke a truer aspect around health and wellness than what I was finding within the church. And so you'd go and you'd talk about being really fit and strong, and it makes you feel healthy, powerful, and you can do more and you can achieve more. And then it's like you come into some environments and you're like, oh, just tone it down. And I'm like, if I'm created by God and I'm supposed to be a representation of Him, why would I not want to be the sexiest beast that I can possibly be, and then encourage other people to do more with their life by leading example? And I'm like, if you don't have a healthy body, then the whole reason God created the earth, which is for us to come and steward it, you then can't action that.
I agree. Absolutely. And this was our discussion that we started down this journey, and a very vibrant discussion we had. And to me, that was where that statement came out of, was that the harm that I've seen regarding the way that people have treated the physical structure and the science behind everything. If you have a healthy body, your mind then has all the proteins and nutrients it needs to do what it wants to do. So it thinks clearer. Your body then functions better. Your kidneys are better. Your liver's better. Your endocrine system gets better. Everything starts to get a lot better and function properly. And because that's what your field really is, more in that process and understanding that. And it's like talking a foreign language to me. But
it's great.
I just look at the spirit side of it and realized for me that I needed to do something with my physical body if I'm to show that I'm a great steward now of this limited thing that Yahweh has given me. If He gives me an eternal body, am I going to steward it the same way as I do the current one I have? Scripture's always saying to like, you're a rewarder of what you steward, and to steward properly and to oversee it properly. And if we're not overseeing our body properly, then what are we doing? We just, and I think for me, that has come out of a theology where only one day when I die will I see God. Only one day when I die will I ever be free from this body of sin. Only one day when I die, well, go die daily at the cross, and then you're dead. And then you can no longer go back to that old rhetoric of when I'm dead. But that's only to the lust of the flesh, not to the death of the flesh.
Correct.
Which means that our flesh has intrinsic value for eternity. Especially if we start understanding Scripture that calls for the redemption of our physical form to be able to remain forever. And this was where our discussion went. And I was like, how do we do this? And so Jake and I kind of get along, and let's have a couple of podcasts. Let's try and talk about some of this stuff and have the spirit, soul, body thing all connected in. And so
it's a lot of fun. And I think it's been really interesting. Like, I came on board with you full time about a year and a half ago. And before that, I'd been working in very non-Christian scenes. I'd been in theatre, I'd been in events, and I'd been in the gym scene. And it was amazing how people take accountability and responsibility for their own actions, because there isn't that, I don't want to say the offset of responsibility being passed to God, but do you think that a lot of people unknowingly pray for something that's actually been the lack of action in their own life And I mean, it's a big conversation, and it's quite a. I'm probably crossing a couple of lines straight off the bat, but nice to meet everybody. But I think that that's such an interesting one, because when you aren't taught the skills, everything seems like it could be a demonic attack. But when you start to understand something, then you start to see the patterns and the framework, and then you become the maker of what it's going to be, and it becomes easier.
In Scripture, it frames a whole series of things that are just works of the flesh. And one of those is lust of the eyes and lust of the flesh. It's just a work of an external thing. It's not a demon. You deal with those gates, and you deal with the structure of what sits there, and you don't give yourself to that through looking at the right place. Yeah. So, I mean, we can go down and talk about eating here.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's a major lust in the flesh for the body of Christ and for nations at this point in time. Like, there's this massive thing and awareness of obesity and what it does, yet there's a drawing to obesity. And I mean, I was going down the same pathway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've lost in the last year, what, 10, 12 kgs now?
12 kgs.
And it's
and it's stayed off.
Which is amazing.
And so I mean, for me, but if I look at my early life, so let me talk about my early life. I would have things go wrong with my body. Now, there were things that I did that were not good for it. You know, you can't jump down from a story-high building and over years and roll and do all the martial art things and, you know, and expect your hips to sustain the capacity when they weren't designed to jump from those things. So there's stupid things we do where we think we're bulletproof and we're going to last forever, and you don't. You know, just the other day we had a 29-year-old MMA fighter here in New Zealand, a New Zealander, die.
Yeah.
And I was like, 29, what's going on? And I think it's because of, not saying there's anything wrong with it, I'm just saying that we can sometimes do things where the physical structure cannot cope, and it just goes, I'm done.
Well, I think, like, even within that, I like to look at kind of history over 100 to 300 years, and we talk about things like obesity, and we talk about things like physical stress and endurance, and we're in a time now where, like, you go back 100 years and people weren't even having hot showers. And so you look at the acceleration of, like, the economic development and what it's made available to people, and you don't have to go and hunt for your food anymore. You don't have to be active. It turns up just up the road and you can walk there. And obviously this is circumstantial to where you are in the world, but for 80%, maybe 70% of the world, like, you can get access rather simply to some form of food that you don't have to go and collect. And it creates a divide, because all of a sudden, if 50% of somebody's entire livelihood was to go and collect food to survive, and it's now 10%, what are they now making up that 40% of their time with? And it usually goes to dopamine hits, and you look at what technology's doing.
Yeah, watching
like,
TV.
100%. Everyone that's now watching this. And so that's a really interesting, like, perspective. And then you talk about, like, me and you have both done martial arts for quite a number of years, and that whole development point of physical stress on the body as well. Like, I think there's spiritual stress, I think there's physical stress, and then there's the emotional stress, which is your body, soul,
and
spirit.
diet stress.
100%. And those things, when they're complemented, I feel like that is when, like, you add all of those together, and the duration of what your body can handle just gets less and less and less.
Yeah, I agree.
And then it's like, well, actually, what do I need to get rid of? And I think as a coach, that's probably 80% of what I do, is help people frame what's actually a necessity versus what's not. If you go back to the most simple things, you look at work-life balance, and it's like, I'm terrible at saying this, but I love to work, but outside of that, I always still keep my me time. I prioritize my health, my sleep, my nutrition, and it allows me to do that much more on my work. Whereas if I was to work 10 or 12 hours a day and then go out for takeaways every single night, not train, I would look very different than what I do now. And I think that that's one of the hard things, is people aren't encouraged anymore or given the protocol or training steps to learn their body for them. And we're in an age now because of technology where people are so overwhelmed with information. And like, you go online and you Google, how do I lose weight? And you can find supporting evidence, negative evidence, a third theory, and then somebody else's opinion, all in the same search. And it's one of the difficult things nowadays is if I'm following an influencer that's around any sort of health and fitness, if they haven't been consistent for 2 years, I'm not going to follow them because it could just be a fad. And you don't know that resilience anymore.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, let's talk about some of those subjects. You're talking about fitness, and then the health of the body, like the diet and all of that kind of thing. I know that we're all on our own journey regarding the food we eat.
Totally.
But like for me personally, I am trying to get my own vegetable garden to a point where I feed on my own stuff, not stuff that is bought from external that has all the sprays on it. In my own garden, I don't spray them with anything. Yeah. And when you eat the fruit, it's different. When when you have the vegetables, they're different. And when you want something, you go to the garden, you pick it, and you cook it. So within an hour of you picking it, you're cooking it. Yeah. And so to me, there's a nutritional value that goes into some of this. Plus, on the good side, there's the physical necessity for the upkeep of the maintenance of it.
Absolutely.
And let me assure you, it takes hours to prep stuff, dig stuff over, do it, bending down, picking stuff out. Even the simple fact of bending down to picking something up and working with it and stretching and bending and doing. Yeah. I mean, that was all part of the physical exercise process that, to me, adds to all of the necessity for it. So if let's talk about, I mean, I don't know what subject we want to go down here, but let's talk a little bit about nutrition, because if you don't, for me, my understanding is you don't have the right nutrition, your body can't function properly, which means you mess your sleep up, you mess your ability for endurance, and to me, that also runs into spirit dynamics.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't have that physical stuff structured right, you'll want to sleep, you'll get tired, you'll do all these weird little things that seem to go on in meetings, in conferences where you see someone going to sleep because they've had a sugar hit at lunchtime and they've taken so much carbohydrates in there, not enough protein to sustain their body. Your body goes into catalytic shock and I can't sleep, and then you start blaming your lack of sleep on demons. Sometimes it can be demons, but sometimes it's your own demons and not your own demons. Sometimes it's your own fault because haven't had the right protein, haven't had the right nutrients, haven't had the right sleep. You're now tired, you're physical burnt out, and you come into something where you can finally relax, and your body goes, oh, I can relax.
Exactly.
And you go to sleep instead of being able to maintain all. So it's let's talk a little bit about some of that stuff. Like you've had so much experience in some of this in your own life. I mean, dealing with your own things. Yeah. How have you found that?
It's been a really interesting journey. Like I've only done an entry-level nutrition course. But I've been in the industry now for 8 years, working with people in different environments. And I think the true variance is that everybody's going to be different. But one of the things that a lot of people don't really consider is your gut bacteria being the powerhouse, because whether people think about it or not, the way that your body functions is science. And your food that you put in is the fuel. And depending on what you put in, you could be putting in a really low quality fuel and expecting a really high output, and your body will then use its other minerals and resources available to do that until it can't function anymore. And when you go into your protein especially, your body has amino acids which create your protein chains, and there's your available, and then there's ones that you can only get from food in the simplest way to put it. And if you're not consuming enough protein in a day, then your body's starting point is a negative. And what that then does to the body is it has to draw that from other places. And so, especially as you age and while you're young, I think one of the biggest encouragements for me is to get young people into some form of safe health, wellness, exercise, so that they can build as much muscle, because muscle is so nutriently dense. It's injury prevention, it's strength. Yeah, buddy. And all of those things are what makes, and this stuff for so many people is boring. But
it's so interesting how if we look at gut bacteria and gut science, Scripture says this: out of your belly flows rivers of living water.
Very true.
So there's a spiritual dynamic that to me is connected with a healthy gut.
Yep.
Not only is there the spiritual thing, like you talked about the right proteins, you need the right food to maintain the right spirit life.
Yeah.
You feeding yourself on junk, you're just going to get junk in, junk out.
Yeah.
And so people seem to understand that perspective in the spirit. You engage with the word, you've got to go through process, you've got to engage with Yahweh, you've got to walk through your engagement to give you the right food. Yet we come to the physical.
Yeah.
If I want a river flowing out of my belly, that's going to bring life to that's around me spiritually, then I can do the spirit stuff. Yeah. But then let's come back to the physical thing, go, hey, wait a minute, perhaps I need the right kind of connection physically for that to flow properly also. So my spirit life is also measured by my physical life. What am I doing physically? Not just doing all the Christian things that I'm supposed to do, but actually spiritually and physically. And so to me, they are two pillars that we need to be able to, science and spirit coming back together again to join them so that we can have the right food, have the right gut bacteria, have the right spirit food, have the right gut bacteria to flow. I don't know how else to frame it as in a simile, but have the right internal functional
correct
things so we can move.
Like, I'll use cars as an analogy because that's one of your favorite things. Like, your body is the car and your spirit and soul is the driver. And petrol. And petrol. There we go. Can't forget the actual fuel. So the petrol is the food, the car is the physical body, and then you as the spirit being the driver. And so I think so often we spend so much time praying and we're like, Lord, give me a V6. Like, this is going to be amazing. And we're sitting in like a 19.
Lord, give me a 6-pack.
And it's just that whole reality of sitting there and it's like, well, actually, we've got to be disciplined across all areas of our lives. And it doesn't have to be a 180-degree turn. Like, you look at the word repentance in the Hebrew, which is to turn back to God. And so it's like, but that can be slow and just taking like...
It is.
And if we're playing the long game, and I think that's one of the hard things, like one of the things I see in the fitness industry so much is these HIIT challenges, or we've got an 8-week program and we're going to put somebody into a calorie deficit. They lose all of the weight, but their whole body's ecosystem has been thrown 180 degrees the other way. They hit the end of it, they're so tired, their muscles are so sore because it's not part of their normal routine. The body becomes stressed. They just want sleep because the body's needing to recover. Then their mental headspace starts to get affected, and then they get to the end of it and they're like, oh, I just need a rest. And then the body like whiplashes back 180%, and they're like, oh, it mustn't have been for me. And it's like, that gives me PTSD, and I've been in this for so long. And so it's like, how do you find your starting point? And so some people will find it's exercise, some people will find it's nutrition, but at some point you've got to bring all of that together. And I think that's the encouragement for people, is it's sitting there and it's like, I've taken on an office job since I've worked for you, which is the first time in my life. And it's like, this is the most inactive I've ever been in my whole life. And that's a follow through from when I snapped the ankle as well. And so it's like, you sit there and you've got to walk through these processes, and it's like, I can't do what I used to do. So am I creative enough within myself to figure this out for me?
Let's talk about that repentance thing.
Yep.
Because I think it's really important that we have a right framework in people's head here, because everything we do is a small incremental change.
Yep.
And it's the small incremental change that actually brings direction. You can bring correction in a major way, but oftentimes it's to the detriment of everything else.
Absolutely.
So like with a big boat, if you want to go somewhere, you do it slowly, so you then end up in that direction.
Yeah.
So doing something bad is not one day you decide to do something bad. You make small little incremental changes till one day you're now over the line that you said you'd never cross, but because you made incremental changes towards that, you now have moved over the line and going in a different direction. I think it's the same thing. That's spiritually.
100%.
So there's the turning to something, and also the turning away from something. That to me, the incremental changes helps reset your body, helps reset your neuron function, helps reset your cellular system. The same thing spiritually. Spiritually, it's you have to reset.
Correct.
Or else 3 weeks later, you're going to be back doing the same thing you were. And Paul even says that. The things I don't want to do, I'm doing. But the things I do want to do, I don't do. But thank God through Christ, we have faith towards God to be able to achieve these things. And so to me, it's about the incremental changes that you do that set your course, rather than just I'm here and then I'm going to make this decision one day, the New Year thing, you know. I can't stand New Year resolutions from Christians. And so we're going to do this year, like, you know, and then you 6 months down the line, what happened to your resolution? Oh, it doesn't matter. It was just my resolution. But if you make incremental changes, and to me it's the same spiritually and physically.
Correct.
If we start making small little incremental changes. Now, I mean, I just talk about me. Through this, like I had a whole lot of tests done. So here's the science. So I had a whole lot of tests done, found that my body type system, genetics, don't like sugar. So it doesn't process sugar properly. That's any sugar.
Yeah.
So I made a choice, like a conscious choice to, first of all, stop having anything with sugar in it. Do you know how hard that is?
Yeah.
Well, you probably do because you're in the industry.
Well, I think one of the key points and like on that though as well is it wasn't you figuring it out. You went and saw a nutritionist and you went and worked through all of this stuff. And that's what I mean by like collaboration and working with other people to complement your weaknesses is really intelligent. And so often people wrestle and
But they do the spirit thing.
100%.
But they won't do it with the physical thing.
Yeah. And so like that led you like how many years of like, and especially dude, like the reality is with all your international travel, like before COVID, you were doing how many conferences a year?
32 conferences a year, yeah.
And it's like what that does to your system. You've got your circadian rhythm, your sleep patterns, your adrenal gland, like all of your like operating system doesn't have regularity, and the body does
Well, it took me 2 years to recover from that over COVID.
Yeah.
2 years.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
And so, and I think when you put that as a perspective, like you're sitting at, how old now, 63?
64 this year. Yeah.
And so you're undoing 64 years worth of stuff.
Yeah.
And so that perspective is, if it takes 2 years, you've done pretty well. Like that's a great ratio of return.
It is. Yep.
And the body is there to thrive and do really well to support you on that journey.
Yeah.
And that's why I love science, because we sit there and it's like, okay, well, what's my body type?
Yeah.
And you sit there and it's like, am I male or female? And you sit there and you look at like the hormonal regulations that happen as you age. Masculine and feminine work very differently.
Yeah.
And so
sure.
the way that you train, like you can push guys so much harder to like almost breaking point, and they can bounce back and almost be sweet the next day if they've got healthy like testosterone levels and like good protein. But if you do that to a female over and over again, then her body's going to get to the point and it's like, hey, look, but then you've got your different makeup types, and some people will thrive in it and some people won't.
Yeah.
And that's why you've got your long distance runners, you've got your strength and conditioning people. And I'd imagine it's the same within the spiritual aspect as well. Like you have your function, I operate very differently than what you do, and I'm cool with that.
Yeah,
but
you're right.
one of the things I really wanted to talk about today was like priorities, because I feel like we so often get inspired by other people that we actually neglect figuring out who we are and what it is that's important to us. Like probably 80% of my clients, the six-pack, the lean muscle, massive build isn't actually the end goal. It's I want to be able to show up for my family. I want to be able to look after my house. I want to be reliable, and I want to be able to make a really safe environment for my family to thrive in. And I'm like, I can do that. And it's like that whole encouragement is like, but if you're an athlete, that is 180 degrees the opposite direction. So your prioritization of what it is that you're wanting to build and facilitate within your life is a really great starting point, because when you compare yourself against yesterday, then you're not sitting there and comparing somebody else's 40-year journey of success to your current reality.
Yeah.
And I think that's when it comes to health, it is those small changes. Like, I usually draw people's awareness to things like your nutrition, primarily your protein intake, sleep, like regularly, like, are you getting a good amount of sleep? I was terrible with that, and like I did a genetics test a few years ago, earlier last year, and found out I've always been a 5.5 to 6 hours a night kind of dude, and whole life thrived off it and been really good. And I was like, cool, I just mustn't need as much sleep. And then I did a genetics test, and there was like one of the sleep variances was a trait within my genetics that wasn't strong. And so I started taking a supplement, and now I'm back up to like 7 hours to 7.5 a night. And all it was is because I was ignorant, and I can't sit there and pray against it because it probably wouldn't have changed. Like, it's my genetics, like, and you learn these things. But it's why, like, my favorite verse in the Bible is the one about like it's a son's role to go and seek out the mysteries. And for me, science is this beautiful mystery. Like, if you ever want to figure out how complex and cunning God is, go and study science and look at atoms, look at biology, look at chemistry, like, the atoms that make up a glass, like, how the heck are those ones transparent and wood isn't? Like, what are the variances that happen? Like,
it's the way you think that's the problem, Sonny.
Exactly. So, but I don't know, I think like, and you would have noticed it in the last year, like you went back to traveling and kind of going abroad, and did you find you had more energy?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, I feel also better physically.
Yeah.
And then just coping with the mechanism of realizing I'm getting older, and then understanding that, and then working with Yahweh on one point to engage with the eternal structure.
Yeah.
And then in stewarding, trying to steward this the best way I can.
Yeah.
And so the journey has been off sugar.
Absolutely.
And it's been lovely, limiting my calorie, carbohydrate intake to 32 to 35 a day.
Yep.
And that's, it's a complete diet change. But I found my gut health has got better.
Yeah.
I found, I'm drinking 2 liters of water a day plus a cup of tea and a couple of cups of coffee. People have said to me, get rid of the coffee. I haven't quite dealt with that demon yet.
Have you dealt with your demons yet? I'll keep my coffee. Thank you. No.
Yeah, and so that's a work of my flesh. And I made a conscious choice to hold on to it because I really like it, especially single origin Ethiopian or good. Goji coffee. I mean, it's all good. Whatever. Yeah. But I do think again, like if we look at physical as well as spiritual, and stop trying to blame things on the physical world that are spiritual, and stop blaming spiritual things on physical. Yeah. Lord, I'm obese. Yeah. Take away my obesity. And I'm not trying to attack obese people. This is one of the things that I'm finding. I think it's
probably one of the biggest things that's starting to happen. And if we actually dive into that a little bit too, like you look at the development of things being done fast, and it means it comes at a compromise of quality. And so, you sit there and you look at people who struggle to lose weight, and quite often it is the biology and the cellular reactions that's happening in the body that's a detriment, because when your body's in a stressed state, be it physically, spiritually, emotionally, all of those things, it holds on because it doesn't know the environment that it's in. And if you're also not providing your base nutrient density for the body's requirements, then your body's not going to want to let go of what it's got either, because it's like, I need this as an emergency resource, collect as much as I can, because I actually can't trust my host to provide what's needed.
Well, I mean, so let's talk about the science of, so decision for me was to go with sugar.
Yep.
So my diabetic markers came down, were really good, but my insulin cellular resistance was really, really high.
Yep.
And I'm going through some more tests shortly a year later to see where that's at.
Yeah, amazing.
So but I've noticed that my hunger for sugar's got less.
Correct.
And if I have a bit of sugar, and the sugar I'm having is from fruit, I'm actually not putting on weight.
Yeah.
So I think, again, so there's the physical thing. So no sugar, restricting it, the reaction to it, and having to work it out over a year.
Yeah.
So that my body can balance itself, where if I do have a bit of it in the right type,
Correct.
it doesn't create a problem. Because before, if I had any sugar, it would just
Absolutely.
produce fat.
Yeah.
And I couldn't understand why I was getting fat.
Yeah.
Like I would consider eating reasonably healthy, but I was having a lot of fruit and a lot of potato and bread and these things that have a lot of carbohydrate sugars in them. And when I cut them out, of course, my body went and that reaction in my system. And so, but if we take this spiritually, to me, it's exactly the same thing. You can find in your life where you stop doing something, and there's a closing down and a shutting down of spirit life, and it's not like it used to be, and I want what I used to have, but what I used to have, I was at liberty to sin or do my stuff, but now I'm not doing this, and it's so hard to engage with Yahweh. Well, of course, your system's reacting to it, and to me, there's, again, the physical just overlays the spiritual, and the spiritual overlays the physical, so together, it's unreal.
One of the key things that I try and always drive home to people when it comes to fitness is find a way to make the tedious stuff fun. And so for me, if I look at your life and when you get to travel, you love being with people in conferences. They don't see you praying for hours, engaging, reading the word, doing all of that stuff, and it's behind the scenes, but you want to have that fun outlet. And so it's how can you celebrate something? And so we all use, and it's I'll get people to record their weight. I'll get people to take progress photos, depending on how much they're going after it, measurements, because then you're seeing and you're getting the hit of the reward. And there's some really, really intelligent people out there that are far smarter than I am, and they do all of this research around neuro-linguistic programming. You go into pattern recognition, you go into all of your sleep science, muscle density, and how even that reduces your aging, and all of those sorts of factors. And I think if your mindset is that, oh, this is difficult, oh, this is hard, then it's not
I can't do it.
It's not actually a priority. And so that's when I sit down with people and I'll ask them the question. I'm look, are you willing to sacrifice 10 years of your life for this? You can neglect it if you want. I'm not here to be your parent. You're an adult, so you make your own decisions. But how do we prioritize something that's going to return the most that you will ever get in your life? We talk about muscle being gold.
Long game.
100%.
Long game.
Yeah. So it's just it's really fun. I think I sit there and I'm a massive person that. When I did my ankle injury back in 2020 and I had to stop my active life for probably 2 to 3 years while going through that process, I think it's almost the equivalent of what I would expect people to hit when they're in their 60s or 70s and all of a sudden their body's not functioning the way they want to.
Yep.
And it's crap, this is, mentally this is difficult, and it's death by 1,000 cuts rather than being hit by a car kind of vibe,
Yeah.
And so most people, they die daily if they never put the life back in.
Yeah, but the issue isn't about dying daily. The issue is dying so you can live.
Correct. Yeah.
And so I think that for me the physical thing is now living so that I can last forever.
Yeah.
Instead of dying daily to what I want, so I don't have it. And there's a real mental shift that's got to go on inside, away from I have to, the process of religious works, to the dial of desire, where I engage with it and turn it to actually I want to.
Yeah.
Because for about the first 6 months of my little journey into some of what I'm doing was I want to lose weight.
Yeah.
Every day I would talk to my body and go, we are going to lose weight. I am going to work with you and I'm going to have you forever. I'm going to work with you and we are going to lose weight, not just I'm going to lose weight.
Yeah.
It's me as the spirit being, me as the soul being, me as my body.
Yeah.
We together are going to lose weight.
And when I listen to that as well, like that's you aligning yourself, body, soul, and spirit, because you took action physically
Correct.
by controlling your food intake, and you started being on the rower, you started going for walks, and then your soul emotionally is finding itself and what's important to it, and then spiritually you're
And
engaging.
enjoying what I'm doing.
Yeah, and I think that that's usually where most people get the contention point, is because there's one of those key three balances that actually aren't in alignment, and but it can come from any of those three places that throws that out, because the body's kind of the end point.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I mean, in the Thunder Academy, so in Thunder Academy, Jake did a teaching for us for an hour with the students on a whole lot of these things, and this is where some of our discussion came out of, and it's the first time I've seen Jake do that, and so these will be eventually available, I think, on his website or whatever he's going to do with them, but for Thunder Academy students, it will be available for you too. But I just think that it was so beautiful watching the physical process that you wrote up and displayed for the students on how these things work with the spirit dynamics of this realm that we talk about as an overshadowing, dominionizing kingdom, where there's cooperation. And I think that, you know, as I said at the very beginning, I think that the thing about our body going to die, and the thought, I just want to be out of my body to see Yahweh, you know, and not taking care of this temple. Like we say this rhetoric, but are we really following through on the rhetoric? Are we really consciously making decisions to take care of some of the physical structure of what we are doing?
I think then that leads into a really interesting, I would say, conversation point is intentionality, because that whichever you water is going to be what grows, and today's society is almost taking intentionality away and telling people what to be, and then people are now losing their own will and their own desire.
That's what an influencer is, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Telling them
But
what to do.
you sit there, and one of the advancements of technology, especially now that we're coming into so much AI, is you look at like metadata and you look at algorithms and you look at what it is, and it picks up on the things that you watch. It provides it so simply, and you look back to the hunter-gatherer season and it's like, you know, 40% of your time used to be that, now it's 30, now it's 20, now it's 10, and it's filling that gap of that indifference, and it just throws people out. And it's that 100 cuts, like each little bit, and it's never just the moment. And if you're not intentional around those things, you don't notice it. And that's
fascinating. Like I so love these bits of discussion that we have, just sitting down and watching TV. Like it's amazing. Like Kay and I are starting to just occasionally turn the TV off, and like during the summer it's lovely because you can get outside and go for, you know, do gardening and go do stuff outside and go for walks and things like that. But during the winter it's a little bit different. And so there's got to be, again, intentionality sitting in behind it, where you actually have to make the decision
to do
and not to do.
Well,
but that's spiritual too. See, this is the thing. So we try and isolate the science and the physical and go, oh, that's just science and physical. And we have all these spiritual activities we try and do to make the science and physical better. But we're not dealing with making these better here. We're just trying to do this. And we're blaming the devil for the garbage that's going on here because we're only doing this. We've got to be doing this.
Well, it's almost like taking a can of water and like pouring it on the ground here when you're expecting to get the plant over there. And so like that dynamic.
Plant grow root to here.
And people are like sitting there doing this. And I think we're all guilty of it. Like life gets busy and there's a lot of things that take our time, and that's why I love the long game, because like I sit there and most people are, I don't have time in a day. I'm like, lengthen your scope. How about a week? And it's like, oh, my week's really busy. And I'm like, cool, how about a month? And like, if you can't find time within a month to start, then I'm really sorry, but you've got to change your priorities because everyone gets the same amount of time.
Yep.
So,
Convicted.
yeah, but it's like,
I mean, these are some of the discussions that Jake and I have had about my life. I lived a very, 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 very busy life with what I was doing and those kind of things, and it was a very similar kind of conversation. You know, like in a month, how much time do you have for yourself? Are you doing anything for just you for a month for 4 hours or 2 hours where you're just doing what you want to do? And I was like,
but it seems so overwhelming to start, and like, and that's the hard part. And like, I think, especially with people like yourself, and people probably realize this about you, but you're such a, like, I would almost go down the line and say you are a people pleaser because you want to help people succeed. You want them to do better, but that comes at the detriment of yourself. And then you hit COVID and it sat there, and then your body was like, whoa, here's the rest. And it was like crash,
right.
like reset, reboot systems, like let's go.
Yep.
And it's sitting there and it's like, oh, cool. So are you gonna prioritize yourself now so that you can then do better for everybody else? And like,
well, I made that decision this week, bro.
Freaking boom. So good.
I actually said no to something.
It was amazing.
For
Made me so happy.
ages, so it was really, really good. It was a very good pleasure to have that part of my life back. And so, but Jake, this has been a wonderful portion of discussion, and very cool, and kind of looking forward to it. So I hope you folks enjoy our time here together, and I have no doubt we will do another one together and pick up some of these discussions, because I think that they're very, very important. So, Jake, thank you so much for being on with us.
No worries.
And really looking forward to the development of your website and everything. And that'll be on here, so Jake can give us the address of your website so that they can facilitate that and have a look at what he does, and some of the things that he does is, to me, is just amazing. Yeah,
I think before we kind of wrap up, if people do want to go and check out what I do, it's found at phm.training. But I'm still very much in a build phase at the moment. It's really challenging when you try and lead somebody through a journey when every journey is different.
Yep.
And that's the hard part when you come into coaching. It's like you can create a really large system and tell people to do this, but if you don't give them the skills that they need to learn to interpret their reality, then you're almost stitching them up and they're wasting their money and their time.
Let's talk about this in our next one.
Sounds good, bro.
Let's start with this subject in our next one, because it's like, I'm just going with 1,000 questions in my head. Like, spiritually we do all this, but physically we don't. So let's pick this up at the next one.
Thank you.
Everybody, Shalom, thank you so much for being with us and enjoying the podcast. Cheers.